Welcome back to another virtual conference house call interview as part of our ACC 2020 coverage. I'm Kevin Kunzman, Managing Editor of HCP Live, and I'm joined today by Dr. Martha Gulati, a cardiologist at Banner University Medicine Heart Institute and Chief of Cardiology at the University of Arizona. We're a day removed now from ACC 2020's virtual sessions that ran over the weekend, but there's obviously still a lot of data to be shared and discussed, disseminated, broken down as to how it's going to impact cardiology for the next year, what exactly these findings implicate for future meetings discussions, and really maybe if there's anything that's been left on the table that needs to be discussed as something that needs to be improved or built upon. And probably one of the biggest headlining trials that we saw on the last day of the meeting was actually the E3 findings showing potential benefit, if not a strange influence of nicotine and non-nicotine electronic cigarettes in the role of smoking cessation when combined with counseling and lifetime smokers. And Dr. Gulati is actually going to join us to talk about that right now. And how you doing?
Yeah, so E3 was an interesting study. I think it was a really, important study. As a community, the cardiology community is generally in the United States steered away from e-cigarettes, mostly because we lack a lot of data. And a lot of our patients anecdotally will tell us, of course, that they were able to quit using e-cigarettes. So having a trial actually is important, but I think this is an early trial. So this trial, again, small study, 3 arms, one just involved counseling, involved cigarettes with no nicotine, and the other arm was e-cigarettes with nicotine. What we found was that the e-cigarettes with nicotine arm, which also included counseling, was more successful than counseling alone at 12 weeks. I think all of us in the healthcare field know that 12 weeks doesn't mean you've quit smoking. So that's one issue. It's an early stage, but they do intend to follow them out to a year. So that's good. I think really be interested in the 1-year data. But the other question it leaves for us, what's in them? I mean, that's the biggest thing that I always don't know. I don't know how much nicotine is in them. I don't know what other carcinogens are in them. I know nicotine is in them and therefore it's addictive like cigarettes are addictive. So are we trading also one addictive substance to another? And if we can't get them off e-cigarettes, then they're still getting nicotine and potentially other hazardous substances inhaled into their body. And I know this is a strange time right now. We're all overwhelmed by COVID-19, but remember a year ago, what we were all talking about was vaping. And the vaping crisis hit us with young people dying from inhalation. And again, we know what inhaling. So it's really hard to say what the headlines have said about this stuff. E-cigarettes are better at helping people quit, because I think what we still need is long-term effects of vaping or e-cigarettes. We need to know long-term if you're able to abstain from cigarettes, like out to 1 year, and then how do we wean it? I think that's another thing. It's you're taking one thing to another. And then how do you get them off of it if they're just going to use e-cigarettes the rest of their life? And again, the safety profile is not consistent. We don't know one version of electronic cigarette from another can be very different. What's in them is different. And the FDA is not regulating in a substantial way. So that's what makes it so complicated. I'm not filling a tube or what a cartridge of what somebody is inhaling. I don't know it's got this much nicotine and something else buying these. So I think that that's what makes it different to translate the E3 into our practice. In general, a lot of people have asked me did the results of E3 make me want to incorporate that in my smoking cessation guidance for my patients? And I would say right now it's too early. I know the British right now, I believe, do advise e-cigarettes part of the potential smoking cessation. In the US, the American College of and the American Association do not, and we need evidence, and it'll take some time to get that evidence.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the fact of, one, that this was a 12-week trial as opposed to the previously planned 52. And interestingly enough, the explanation coming from investigators was because of a manufacturing issue. And before I even got into the results itself, my first thought from that was, okay, what's the manufacturing issue? What's being manufactured here? What's coming out? What's the product that they're using for this? And it's because I believe, we have a strong understanding already of what's the worst case scenario that can come from electronic cigarettes. We already saw it with the splurge of lung disease cases that we saw from those that were modified or filters were removed from last year, and resulting in very spontaneous and uncertain deaths among the strongest users last year. We already know the worst case scenario. I think people are assuming, though, that the best case scenario, it serves some kind of like training wheels default towards cessation, though there's no proof of that right now. And it's very interesting to see these findings that, lead you to believe that leads that narrative, but there's no science there beyond that, it seems. Am I right in assuming that?
I think so. It was interesting because I know the investigators did point out that these very heavy smokers that they were enrolled into the trial. So, I mean, again, with it, we're not good at getting people to quit smoking anyway. And perhaps group is the hardest group, and we are looking for different solutions, but I don't think it ends with this study. And I think we need longer term data, and we need to know what's in there. That's the problem. They may have manufactured something just for that study, but I don't think that's what people are necessarily buying when they're going in and using e-cigarettes. And it's safety first. I mean, I think I heard that there was one case where somebody with COPD did have a pretty heavy exacerbation that they didn't think was, and they were in the vaping, in the e-cigarette arm. I don't know if we know more about that, but it sounds like it was only one patient, so it wasn't like they had it happen in many. And I think the investigators are cognizant of these issues. And in fact, I think I heard a comment that they were even, they had approached some of the e-cigarette makers to be part of this potentially. And they weren't even interested. They wouldn't contact the investigators back. So at least we know it was unbiased from that standpoint. A lot more information we need. I mean, I think the one thing is that I don't want people to dismiss the counseling part of it. And it was also part of the e-cigarette part. And whenever you're trying to get somebody to quit smoking, they need constant contact. And that's a lot of the stuff that we don't have time to give. Even the type of counseling that was provided in this study isn't necessarily what we provide when we tell our patients to quit smoking.